Look at this woman. I bet she doesn't even know what country she's in. The words were spoken in Korean, fluid and cutting, slicing across the private dining room like an invisible blade. Min-ho Park didn't bother lowering his voice. Why would he? To him, the black maid standing beside the table refilling water glasses was just part of the furniture, as incapable of understanding his language as the expensive artwork on the walls. Sarah Miller remained motionless. Her fingers gripped the crystal pitcher with controlled force. Her face betrayed nothing. She probably can't even read, Min-ho continued in Korean to the 4 international investors seated around the table, none of whom spoke the language. These people are all the same. They clean toilets and beg for scraps. That's all they're good for. The Azure Pearl was the most exclusive private dining establishment in Seoul. No sign on the door. Reservations required 6 months in advance. A single meal cost more than most Koreans earned in a month. It was Tuesday, 8:00 p.m., and the dining room was reserved entirely for Min-ho Park and his guests. Min-ho was 48 years old, the head of the Baekdu Syndicate, one of the most powerful criminal organizations in South Korea. His empire stretched from gambling dens in Busan to luxury real estate in Gangnam, from political bribes to international money laundering. To the outside world, he was a successful venture capitalist. To those who knew better, he was untouchable. If you're ready for a story about power, deception, and the moment the hunter becomes the hunted, hit that subscribe button right now. You won't believe how this ends. Sarah was 32 years old. She had worked as Min-ho's personal maid for 9 months. To him and his associates, she was invisible. A black woman in a traditional Korean maid's uniform, her natural hair pulled into a tight bun, eyes always downcast, movements quiet and efficient. No one looked twice. No one asked questions. "Mori wine," Min-ho commanded in English, snapping his fingers at Sarah without looking at her. "Yes, sir," Sarah said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. She moved to the sideboard where bottles of wine worth thousands of dollars stood in temperature-controlled cases. Min-ho turned back to his guests, speaking in smooth English now, his accent barely noticeable after years of international business. "Gentlemen, as I was saying, the investment opportunity I'm presenting is unprecedented. The Seoul Waterfront Development Project will triple your returns within 18 months. 4 men nodded eagerly. There was James Whitmore, a British real estate mogul in his 60s, Klaus Hoffmann, a German banker with more money than sense, Robert Chen, an American investor who had made his fortune in tech, and lastly, Ahmed Al-Rashid, a Saudi businessman looking to diversify his portfolio. None of them knew they were sitting across from a criminal. None of them knew they were about to be robbed. Sarah poured the wine with practiced precision, moving around the table like a ghost. As she reached Min-ho's glass, he switched back to Korean, addressing the 2 other Korean men standing against the wall, his personal security. "These foreign idiots," Min-ho said in Korean, laughing quietly, "they think they're investing in a legitimate development project. They have no idea the permits are fake, the land doesn't exist, and in 6 months I'll be $50 million richer while they're trying to sue a shell corporation in the Cayman Islands." His security guards smiled. One of them chuckled. "Boss, you're a genius," one said in Korean. "I know," Min-ho replied. "Shut up," he commanded, "I'm not finished." He turned his attention to Sarah, who was now standing back against the wall, hands folded in front of her. He looked at her with the expression one might give a stray dog. "Look at this creature," Min-ho said in Korean, making sure his international guests couldn't understand. "I found her begging for work 9 months ago. Desperate. Pathetic. I pay her barely enough to survive, and she's grateful for it. She cleans my toilets, washes my floors, and doesn't say a word. Perfect slave labor." Sarah's jaw tightened imperceptibly. Her eyes remained fixed on the floor. "Stand up," Min-ho commanded suddenly in English, looking directly at Sarah. Sarah straightened from where she'd been standing against the wall. "Come here," Min-ho commanded. Sarah walked to his side. The international investors watched with mild curiosity, unsure what was happening. Min-ho switched back to Korean. "I'm going to fire her tonight," he said to his guards. "Just for fun, I want to see her cry. These American blacks are always so emotional. It will be entertaining." He smiled cruelly. "But first, let's make her work for it." He turned to Sarah and spoke in English. "Bo." Sarah remained still. "I said Bo," Min-ho commanded, his voice harder. "Show respect." Sarah bowed slightly, the minimum required by protocol. It wasn't enough for Min-ho. He wanted submission. He wanted humiliation. "Lower," Min-ho commanded. "On your knees." The room went quiet. Even the international investors looked uncomfortable now. James Whitmore cleared his throat. "Min-ho, is this really necessary?" "Shut up," Min-ho commanded in English, not even looking at him. "This is my country, my culture, my rules." He turned back to Sarah, switching to Korean so his guests wouldn't understand the full extent of his cruelty. "Get on your knees, you worthless dog. Show everyone here what you really are. Nothing, nobody, a piece of trash I picked up off the street." Sarah Miller didn't move, and then she did something no one expected. She smiled. It wasn't a smile of submission. It wasn't a smile of fear. It was the smile of someone who had just decided to stop pretending. The silence in the Azure Pearl was absolute. Even the soft background music seemed to fade. Min-ho frowned. That smile disturbed him in a way he couldn't articulate. It was wrong. It didn't fit. "Didn't you hear me?" Min-ho said in Korean, his voice rising. "I said get on your knees." Sarah tilted her head slightly. When she spoke, it wasn't in English. It was in Korean. Perfect, flawless Korean, with the refined Seoul dialect spoken only by those educated in the most prestigious institutions. "I heard everything you said tonight, Mr. Park," Sarah said, each word crystalline and precise. "Every single word since these gentlemen walked through that door." The color drained from Min-ho's face. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. Sarah continued, her voice carrying through the silent room with the authority of someone who had commanded attention in far more important places than this. "You said these foreign investors are idiots. You said the permits for the Seoul waterfront development project are fake. You said the land doesn't exist. You said in 6 months you'll be $50 million richer while they try to sue a shell corporation in the Cayman Islands." The 4 international investors froze. Robert Chen's wine glass slipped from his hand and shattered on the marble floor. Nobody moved to clean it. "You also said," Sarah continued in Korean, her eyes locked on Min-ho's face, "that you found me begging for work, that you pay me barely enough to survive, that I'm perfect slave labor, and that you were going to fire me tonight just for fun because you wanted to watch me cry." Min-ho stood up so violently his chair toppled backward. "Who are you?" he hissed in Korean. "Who sent you?" "Nobody sent me, Mr. Park," Sarah said calmly. "I applied for this position 9 months ago. You hired me because I was desperate and black and you thought I'd be too stupid to understand anything beyond clean this and bring that." She took a step forward. Min-ho took a step back. "But I'm not what you think I am. My name is Sarah Miller, and 6 years ago, I wasn't a maid in Seoul. I was a senior intelligence analyst for the Central Intelligence Agency stationed at the American Embassy in Seoul. I spent 6 years working on North Korean operations. I speak Korean fluently, including 3 regional dialects. I also speak Japanese, Mandarin, and Russian." A murmur rippled through the room. The international investors were staring at Sarah with expressions ranging from shock to confusion. James Whitmore found his voice first. "I'm sorry, what exactly is happening here?" Sarah switched to English, her voice clear and professional. "Mr. Whitmore, Mr. Hoffman, Mr. Chen, Mr. Al-Rashid, I apologize for the deception, but you need to hear this. The man you're about to give $50 million to is Min-ho Park, the head of the Baekdu Syndicate, one of the largest criminal organizations in South Korea. The investment opportunity he presented to you is a fraud. There is no Seoul waterfront development project. The permits are fake. The land doesn't exist. He just told his security guards in Korean that he plans to steal your money and disappear behind a shell corporation." Klaus Hoffman stood up, his face red. "This is absurd. Min-ho, tell her she's lying." Min-ho's mind was racing. He needed to regain control. "She's insane," he said in English, forcing a laugh that sounded hollow. "A disgruntled employee making up stories. Gentlemen, please don't listen to this." "Sit down," Sarah commanded in Korean, her voice cutting through his words like a blade. The phrase in Korean carried the weight of absolute authority, the kind of command that bypassed conscious thought and struck directly at the spine. Min-ho sat. He didn't mean to. His body obeyed before his mind could catch up. Sarah switched back to English. "Mr. Park also discussed, in Korean, his money laundering operations through 7 restaurants in Gangnam. He mentioned bribing Judge Kim Seong-min of the Seoul Central District Court. He mentioned having Detective Lee Chan-woo of the Seoul Metropolitan Police on his payroll. And he mentioned, quite specifically, a shipment of methamphetamine arriving at Incheon port on Thursday under the Customs Code for industrial cleaning supplies." Min-ho's face went from pale to gray. "You're lying," he whispered. You can't prove any of that. Sarah smiled again, that same knowing smile. I can prove all of it, because for the last 9 months, while you thought I was just your ignorant maid, I've been wearing a recording device. Every conversation, every meeting. Every phone call you made in my presence, all recorded, all backed up, all ready to be delivered to the appropriate authorities. She reached into her uniform pocket and pulled out a small device no bigger than a button. This is a CIA-grade recording device. It's been running 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for 9 months. You have cameras in your house, Mr. Park. You have security everywhere, but you never once thought to check the maid. Min-ho lunged at her. He moved with the desperation of a cornered animal, reaching for Sarah's throat. He never made it. Sarah moved with the fluid precision of someone trained in close combat. She sidestepped, grabbed his wrist, twisted, and in one smooth motion, had Min-ho face down on the table with his arm locked behind his back. The entire movement took less than 2 seconds. I also have training in Krav Maga, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and tactical combat, Sarah said calmly, still holding Min-ho pinned. 6 years in intelligence operations tends to require that. Min-ho's security guards finally reacted, reaching for their weapons. Don't, a new voice said from the doorway. Everyone turned. 3 people entered the private dining room. The first was a woman in her 50s, wearing a sharp business suit, her expression cold and professional. Behind her were 2 men in suits that screamed law enforcement. The woman spoke in English first, then repeated in Korean. My name is Director Han Jae-woo of the Korean National Police Agency, Financial Crimes Division. We've had Mr. Park under investigation for 18 months. Miss Miller has been working with us as a confidential informant since she made contact with our agency 9 months ago. Sarah released Min-ho and stepped back. He slumped against the table, breathing hard, his world collapsing around him. Director Han continued. Mr. Park, you're under arrest for fraud, money laundering, bribery of public officials, and conspiracy to distribute controlled substances. Gentlemen, she addressed the international investors, you'll need to come with us to provide statements. Your funds are safe. This operation was designed to catch Mr. Park in the act of fraud. The 2 officers moved forward and handcuffed Min-ho. He didn't resist. The fight had gone out of him completely. They led him toward the door. Min-ho looked at Sarah one last time. Why? He asked in Korean, his voice broken. Why did you do this? Sarah looked at him with an expression that held no anger, no triumph, just cold professional detachment. Because 6 years ago my father was killed in a car accident in Los Angeles. The driver was high on methamphetamine that was traced back to a shipment from South Korea. The investigation went nowhere. The case went cold, but I didn't forget. She stepped closer. I left the CIA. I spent 2 years tracking the source. The trail led to you, to your organization, to your shipments, so I applied to be your maid. I made myself invisible. I let you underestimate me. I let you think I was nothing, and I waited. Min-ho stared at her, understanding dawning in his eyes. You used me, he whispered. No, Sarah corrected. I caught you, there's a difference. As the officers led Min-ho out of the Azure Pearl, his last sight was of Sarah Miller standing tall in her maid's uniform, no longer invisible, no longer underestimated. No longer anything but exactly what she had always been, dangerous. If you're loving this twist, smash that like button, because what happens next will blow your mind. Trust me, you don't want to miss this. The Azure Pearl cleared out quickly after that. The international investors were escorted to police headquarters to provide statements. Director Han stayed behind to brief Sarah. You did well, Director Han said in English, though her Korean was perfect. 9 months of playing a role like that couldn't have been easy. Sarah removed the recording device from her uniform and handed it to Director Han. It was necessary. Your father would be proud, Director Han said quietly. Sarah didn't respond to that. The wound was still too fresh, even after 6 years. Director Han seemed to understand. She changed the subject. The evidence you've gathered is extensive. Min-ho Park's entire operation will collapse. We estimate at least 40 arrests within the week. His political connections, his business fronts, his distribution networks, everything. Good, Sarah said simply. What will you do now? Director Han asked. The agency would be interested in hiring you as a consultant. Your skills are... No, Sarah interrupted gently. I'm done. This was personal. It's finished now. Director Han nodded, understanding. She handed Sarah an envelope. Your payment as agreed, plus a bonus from the agency. You've earned it. Sarah took the envelope without opening it. She knew what was inside. $200,000, enough to start over. enough to finally let go. After Director Han left, Sarah stood alone in the private dining room. The shattered wine glass was still on the floor. The overturned chair where Min-ho had been sitting lay on its side. The remnants of a $50 million fraud and a 9-month deception. She thought about her father, Marcus Miller, a veteran who had survived 2 tours in Iraq only to be killed by a drugged driver on the streets of Los Angeles. She thought about the moment she'd learned the methamphetamine in the driver's system had come from South Korea. She thought about the rage that had consumed her when the investigation was closed due to insufficient international cooperation. She had resigned from the CIA that week. She had liquidated her savings. She had flown to Seoul with nothing but a plan for revenge and the willingness to become invisible to achieve it. 9 months of cleaning toilets. 9 months of bowing and scraping. 9 months of enduring Min-ho Park's casual cruelty and racist remarks. 9 months of being treated like she was nothing. It had been worth it, every single degrading moment. Sarah removed her maid's uniform in the private bathroom of the Azure Pearl. Underneath, she wore simple jeans and a t-shirt. She looked at herself in the mirror. For 9 months, she had kept her eyes downcast, her voice quiet, her presence minimal. Now she looked at her own reflection and saw herself clearly for the first time in what felt like years. She was free. Sarah left the Azure Pearl through the back entrance. The Seoul night was cool and clear. The city lights glittered like promises. She had no family waiting for her, no home to return to in America, no job, no plan beyond this moment, but she had something more important. She had justice, and she had herself back. 3 days later, Sarah sat in a small cafe in Itaewon, the international district of Seoul. She was reading the news on her tablet. The headlines were explosive. Billionaire venture capitalist revealed as crime boss. 50 officials arrested in corruption scandal. International fraud ring dismantled. Min-ho Park's face was on every news site, every television screen. His empire was burning, and the flames were spreading to everyone who had protected him. Judges, politicians, police officers, business partners, all falling like dominoes. "Excuse me, is this seat taken?" Sarah looked up. A Korean woman in her 60s stood beside her table, elegant and professional in a tailored suit. "It's available," Sarah said in Korean. The woman sat down. She ordered tea from the server, then turned to Sarah with a knowing smile. "You're Sarah Miller." It wasn't a question. Sarah's guard went up immediately. "Who's asking?" "My name is Park Yeon-soo. I'm the CEO of Hanmi Security Solutions, one of the largest private security firms in Asia. We specialize in corporate espionage, fraud prevention, and risk assessment." The woman's tea arrived. She took a sip before continuing. "I've been following your work. Very impressive." "I don't know what you're talking about," Sarah said carefully. Park Yeon-soo smiled. "Of course you don't, which is why I want to hire you. I need someone who can be invisible. Someone who can infiltrate organizations and gather intelligence. Someone who speaks multiple languages and has intelligence training." She slid a business card across the table. "I'm offering you a position as a senior consultant. The salary is $300,000 a year plus expenses. You'll work on corporate cases, nothing criminal. You'll use your skills to catch fraud, embezzlement, and corporate espionage. Legal, clean, profitable." Sarah looked at the card but didn't touch it. "Why me?" "Because you spent 9 months being treated like trash by one of the most powerful criminals in South Korea, and you never broke cover. You endured humiliation, racism, and degradation, and you used it. That level of discipline and commitment is rare. That level of anger properly channeled is even rarer." Park Yeon-soo leaned forward. "I know why you did what you did. I know about your father. I know you wanted revenge. And you got it, but now what? Are you going to go back to America and do what? Work a normal job? Pretend the last 6 years didn't change you?" Sarah was silent. The woman was right. There was no going back. "I'm offering you a purpose," Park Yeon-soo said. "A way to use what you've learned. A way to catch bad people without having to destroy yourself in the process. And I'm offering you enough money to live well while you do it." Sarah picked up the business card. She looked at it for a long moment. Then she looked at Park Yeon-soo. "I need a week to think about it." "Take 2 weeks," Park Yeon-soo said. "I'm patient, but I'm also right, and you know it." She stood up, placed money on the table for her tea, and walked away. Sarah sat alone in the cafe, holding the business card. Around her, Seoul moved and breathed, indifferent to her crisis. She thought about her father. She thought about the last 9 months. She thought about who she had become and who she might still be. And slowly, carefully, she put the business card in her pocket. 2 weeks later, Sarah stood in the lobby of Hanmi Security Solutions, wearing a professional suit for the first time in 9 months. Park Yeon-soo greeted her personally. "Welcome aboard," Park Yeon-soo said in English. Then switched to Korean. "Your first assignment is in Tokyo, industrial espionage case. The client suspects their CFO is selling trade secrets to a competitor. You'll go in as a consultant. Think you can handle it?" Sarah smiled, not the submissive smile of a maid, not the cold smile of revenge, the confident smile of a professional who knew exactly what she was capable of. "I can handle it," Sarah said in perfect Japanese. Park Yeon-soo laughed. "I knew I made the right choice. Come on, let's get you briefed." As Sarah followed Park Yeon-soo into the elevator, she felt something she hadn't felt in years. Not happiness exactly, not peace, but something close, purpose. The elevator doors closed on her old life. When they opened again, Sarah Miller stepped out into her new one, not invisible anymore, not underestimated, not a victim. Just a woman with skills, purpose, and the hard-won knowledge that the most dangerous people in any room are the ones nobody bothers to see. 6 months later, the consequences of Min-ho Park's fall were still rippling through South Korea's power structures. His trial was scheduled to last 3 years. His assets were frozen. His associates were either in prison or fleeing the country. And somewhere in a maximum security prison in Seoul, Min-ho Park sat in a cell and thought about the black maid he had humiliated, the woman he had called worthless, the woman who had destroyed his empire while cleaning his floors. In Tokyo, Sarah Miller was finishing her 3rd successful case for Hanmi Security Solutions. She had exposed 2 corporate fraud schemes and prevented a major industrial espionage operation. She was earning more money than she ever had at the CIA. And every night before she went to sleep, she looked at the photograph of her father she kept on her nightstand. "I got him, Dad," she whispered to the photo. "I got him for you." The photo didn't answer, but Sarah felt in some small way that her father would be proud, not of the revenge, but of the fact that she had survived, that she had used her pain to create something meaningful, that she had refused to let cruelty break her. She had bent, but she had never broken. And when the time came to stand up, she had stood up in a way Min-ho Park would never forget. Sarah turned off the light in her Tokyo apartment. Tomorrow she had a meeting with a new client. Another case, another challenge, another opportunity to use her skills for something that mattered. She was no longer invisible. She was no longer underestimated. She was exactly who she had always been, but now the world could see it. And that, Sarah thought as she drifted off to sleep, was more powerful than any revenge. If this story had you on the edge of your seat, drop a like and subscribe for more stories about justice, redemption, and people who refuse to stay invisible. Drop a comment and let me know, have you ever been underestimated by someone who had no idea who you really were? I'll see you in the next one.